For me, to be Indigenous is to be a part of a people who were colonized many years ago. For example, where I'm from, in the 1800s the British came and they colonized New Zealand. And now the language, culture, everything to do with Māori is not how it used to be. So for me, I guess that's what I would call Indigenous, is someone who was invaded, colonized, and then had their culture rearranged, reshuffled, and some of it taken away, forgotten, destroyed. During the time of colonization, some of it, or a lot of it, would have been banished. In terms of beliefs, culturally, we believe that women are sacred, which apparently in the rest of the world we always hear that women are always the ones that are inferior to men. But in Māori culture, it was the other way around. Women were the gateway to the spiritual world. And for us, they had sacred bonds that were considered, in a way, like a power. And so, like, most tribes would only have a man as a chief, but in other places, in other areas of the country, there would be women who would be a chief as well. And so the power balance, in a way, was equal, even though men and women did have their own purposes or jobs to do within the Māori communities. For example, men were the warriors, but women still knew how to fight. They still carried weapons as well. But if it was a tribe to invade another tribe, it would be the men who would go invade the other tribe. But women were still taught, and women still knew how to protect themselves and how to fight as well. So even though at times the culture may seem like it is sexist, women can't do this, men can't do that, etc., the balance of the powers within the culture is still there. It's still, I wouldn't say 50-50, but it's more equal than the Western world, I would like to say. Within the environment, as Māori people were considered like Stone Age people, no one had discovered how to use metals or anything. Like, Māori people didn't value gold even. They found it in rivers and stuff, but to them it was just useless. So from the environment, they used plants and stones and wood. The stones and wood were used for weapons and for tools. A certain stone that we call Namu, which the English translation is just green stone, to us that stone was sacred. The stone itself is green, as the English name suggests, and that was used as a form of currency. If you'd make a tool or a weapon out of this, it was considered extremely valuable. And nearly every single native plant, native tree in New Zealand has a medicinal purpose. So all the medicines were made from the roots and the leaves of trees, of shrubs, of little grasses and things like that. Even to make baskets and clothing, everything was made from a plant. Some things were found by chance. For example, Māori people enslaved other tribes during wars and stuff, and so they'd be like prisoners of war from tribal wars, and those prisoners would be used as the cooks for the other tribes and things like that, or they'd be used to bargain to get people back from another tribe. And sometimes they wouldn't feed those slaves, and so the slaves would have to find their own food. And so they would watch the birds in the forest, and if they saw the birds eating the berries, they would try and eat the berries as well. And so the Māori people, the slaves, would watch birds and that in the forest, and if they saw them eating a berry or any other type of leaf or anything, they would get one of the other slaves to try it. And if they weren't sick or they didn't die from it, they assumed it was safe to eat. And so that's how some traditional foods came about, is by chance of seeing other animals eat it. In terms of cultural practices and things like that, like movements, in terms of haka, which is a traditional form of dance, even the way people fight, it was all taken from watching the animals in the forest, birds. Like the way a bird moves, or it jumps side to side and then flies away, it was all mimicked within Māori weaponry skills. And that's where the Māori people learned to fight, that's where they learned to survive, is by watching things in the forest, watching and mimicking nature. The language for the Māori people is Te Reo Māori, which means the language of the Māori people. That language has evolved over about 10,000 years. Before Māori even arrived in New Zealand, there was the Great Polynesian Migration, which was the discovery of all the nations within the Pacific Ocean. And over 10,000 years, the Polynesian people travelled to all these countries, and eventually a group made it to New Zealand, and that group of people became known as Māori. And that's where the language came from, as the evolution of that language from the Great Polynesian Migration. Within New Zealand, there are tribal dialects, there's differences within the language, but there's still only one language, so everyone can understand what each other is saying, even though there are some differences. The differences can be as small as dropping the H's out of words. So instead of saying waharua, other tribes will say wa'arua. And there's different ways of saying how are you. Some say ke te pehea koe, some say e pehea ana koe, and others will say ke te aha koe. But everyone still understands what each other is saying. So if a tribe from the south visited a tribe in the north and the dialects were different, they would still be able to communicate and understand fully, because it's still the same language. The influence of the colonizers on Māori culture now is that our old religion is no longer practiced. We had gods like the Greeks did, the god of love, god of war, god of the sea, god of the earth, god of the forest. We had all of those. Every excuse you can think of for there to be a god, there was a god for it. And when the colonizers arrived, they viewed it as pagan. They viewed it as pagan or savage ways. And so they were told, the Māori people were told to get rid of them. And then the missionaries introduced Christianity. And then soon Christianity spread throughout the country, and everyone stopped acknowledging the god of the sea, the god of the forest, the god of the earth. All of those soon forgotten, except for in old prayers that talk about nature and things like that. And nowadays, no one wears traditional clothing unless it's for a cultural performance. No one believes in the old gods anymore. If any Māori person is a religious person, it's always believing in God, or as in Jesus, or whatever, Christian gods, or some Muslim. But there's no people who follow the old religion. Other influences, obviously, is that all Māori people speak English, and less than half of Māori people